I'm Ethan Etnyre. Welcome to my home and my vineyard. This is Quinn's Vineyard, and we're in Arroyo Grande, California. And that's on the central coast of California, pretty much halfway between LA and San Francisco. Here, it's overcast most all days until 10 or 11 o'clock during the growing season. We get a lot of coastal fog influence. The fog comes in through the night, cools things down nicely. It burns off, but it burns off 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, sometimes noon, sometimes not burning off at all. So, that'll extend our growing season. We believe that lets us develop more nuance and characteristics of really cool climate growing Pinot and Syrah that we can get out of this piece of land. I love Syrah, I love Pinot.
So we're here at Etnyre with Quinn's Vineyard behind me and Ethan Etnyre here to taste me through some of the wines.
I've got a few wines for you. I thought we'd start with our current release, Pinot Noir, Etnyre, Quinn's Vineyard 2020. All in Stelvin enclosure.
All in Stelvin, okay. How did that decision get made?
I just found I really disliked corked wines. The cork flaw of corked wines.
Yes.
Popping a cork out's pretty fun, actually. I don't mind that at all.
It's a nice sound, just boop.
Yeah, and if you can be fairly proficient at it, some people aren't. You got that going too. I like screw caps.
Awesome. Very cool. Just immediately I'm getting just the bright red fruit, flowers. Just seeing most of my hand through the glass.
And certainly, again, like we've talked about, it's not going to be a really massive Pinot, but that's what I like the most. It's got lots of delicate flavors.
And this was the 2020 vineyard.
This is 2020. And
Vintage, yeah.
This is a pretty classic vintage for us as far as the flavor profile that we get. Bright cherry, maybe some rhubarb sometimes, but an earthy component that comes in a quite long-lasting finish.
Yeah, I'm definitely noticing the duration of the time, and it goes a little bit sort of like the hard, and not tannic by any stretch, but there is that hard dustiness right on the end that is not just sort of gushing fruit or pure fruit. It's very interesting.
I like to think of it as it's definitely grown in California, pretty French style, not the fruit bomb. Earthy, interesting components later in the palate.
Yeah, the bones of it feel like it's more French, and then the fruit is that little bit, not a sweet wine by any means, but like a little bit sweeter, but a little bit pleasant. Mm-hmm. And high acid, but by no means like roaring acid.
And that's going to be something I think you'll find with all of our wines. They're pretty high acid wines. Mm-hmm. It's what we grow. It's fortunately what I like. It goes well with food. That's what I'm most interested in. I find it works remarkably well with food.
I'm sure it would, definitely. What are some of the things that you have found you tend to pair with your Pinot?
I love salmon with the Pinot. A bit of miso glaze. Salmon and Pinot all day long for me. I'm a big fan. Some chicken preparations are all right. I think that's a reasonable pairing as well. Every time we have salmon, we have Pinot.
All right. So salmon and Pinot it is for this.
Salmon and Pinot for me, yes.
Where are you coming in alcohol-wise on these?
We're typically somewhere between 13.2 and 14. Mm-hmm. This wine,
13.7. Okay. Yep. San Luis Obispo Coast AVA. Excellent.
Okay, so I will tell you also the bit about the label.
Yes.
So my uncle, who drinks no wine back in California, is a graphic artist, and he said, I'll make you a label. I said, all right. So this was back, way back in the early 2000s, where the internet was not capable of sending large files, so I got thick envelopes of different pictures of wine labels. And I'd circle what I liked and what I wasn't so wild about. I'd take that whole packet and send it back to him. And over a period of about 6 months of back and forth with big packets of manila envelopes, we came up with this. So my last name, Etnyre, my wife's last name in Japanese, Mikuni, and my son, Quinn. So everybody makes the label.
Wonderful. That's very nice. I like that a lot.
It's a pretty fun thing. And that my uncle came up with the whole thing for us. I just recently went back and looked through some of those packets, and wow, I had such volume of stuff to choose from. Different fonts, different colors, and then once we started honing in, then I'd just get 5 different similar fonts and 5 more fonts, and it was amazing the volume of stuff my uncle sent me. It was pretty cool.
Very cool. All right.
Sorry.
No worries.
That was a good sound. So since shortly we're going to be moving on to our 21 wines, as far as the current release, I thought I'd bring out a Pinot Noir of 2021. So that's what I have for you here.
Talk to me a little bit about what the 2021 Vineyard was like on this site.
So on this site, early in the year, we had bud break at a pretty typical time for us. It was cooler than usual right to the start, right at the start, I should say, and we had one of the longer growing seasons that we've had. Typically we'll harvest Pinot somewhere around early to mid-September. We harvested Pinot, I believe this year, it was either late September or early October. We try our best to harvest just when it's ripe, when we've got the phenolic flavors. Something I learned from winemakers in the region that books can't teach you is what the flavors are like in the grapes, rather than just looking at the numbers. Because I could look at the numbers all right. I was all right at looking at numbers and figuring that out. But being able to taste the grapes, and again, like we've talked about, I get one shot at it for Pinot and one shot at it for Syrah, and I have to figure out, are those flavors, what I'm looking for? Are they ripe enough?
So this one definitely feels a little bit riper on the fruit. I'm getting more of like a compote or a gummy type flavor, whereas the previous was a much sort of colder and more precise, more like a hard candy red fruit or hard candy purple fruit.
For me, the 21 wine, and I think this has something to do with the fact that it's been in the bottle less time, actually, than the 20. For me, a sweeter feel, taste in the mouth, and again, like you mentioned, not sweet technically, but the perception of sweetness. A lot more sweetness in this wine. I think that's going to settle down and be less sweet over time, be more evolved and a little bit more like the 2020. I think you'll see that probably in the other wines that I'm going to pour for you.
All right, well, definitely excited.
All right. Hike!
To the left.
That's right.
Swipe left. Boom.
To the left, to the right.
So, something like this.
Oh, fancy.
How about that?
There we go.
See, it's not a cork, so you got to do something, right? Sommelier's got to be able to get a little bit of flair going on.
All right, so what? 2015.
So yes, this is our 2015. Really was a wonderful wine for us. There's a little bit less acidity to this wine, at least early on in winemaking when we were going through the numbers. I find that through time, it also has a slightly less acidic kind of feel in the mouth. I think, again, it emphasizes some of the things that I love about our site and about how the wines come out, of being really a very smooth front to back kind of wine. No rough edges, really, really long finish. Nice fruit that's well well marked with an earthiness as well.
I get some mid-palate herbalness that wasn't present in the younger wines, and that is leaning more and more toward what I see in a lot, like in Volnay or something like that, and not frequently in the California Pinot Noirs, and probably because we're dealing with such a cool climate site that you're going to have more of that interpretation. And definitely on this slightly older bottle, I'm definitely feeling that. But I see what you mean. It doesn't have quite the freshness, but you wouldn't expect it. It's something older.
Exactly so. And I think, again, I don't have wine that I've made that I've put cork in, so I can't say, and it compares so favorably with the cork. I did do that with one vintage. I love the screw cap. But I think that the screw cap also probably is helping to preserve some of the freshness within. But we're getting an aged product. When we taste the 2005, it will have some age on it.
I've had other winemakers talk to me that they feel like that it preserves the fruit and allows the changes to happen in different ways, but that the fruit doesn't get that sort of forest floor nature where like the fruit has fallen off the tree and it's slowly decomposing in the leaves and the sticks kind of thing, but you still get a little bit of the leaves and the sticks as it gets older.
There's a little bit, yeah, exactly so.
And yeah, so for general rule of thumb with California Pinot as a category, this kind of age, we're almost at this point, 9 years from 2015, would be considered by most people to be, this is the oldest you should go. You shouldn't trust it if it gets much older than that in Pinot Noir. And so I think we're going to put a lie to that soon.
I think that's true. I think you're going to like what I'm going to pour next.
Yeah, this certainly is still wildly fresh, young, not so much young as it is healthy, right? Healthy and youthful.
And fresh. I like that term to describe this wine. I think we continue to have, even with age, a freshness about the wine. I think probably in fair part because of a decent amount of acidity. I think that's going to help us age longer. I think the screw cap helps us age longer. I think really the vineyard helps us age longer.
Wonderful.
All right, so now what I have for you is our Etnyre 2005
nice.
Pinot Noir. So this is the first year we made Pinot Noir commercially. I hope you like it. I think you'll like it.
I expect I will like it,
I
yes.
think that's a pretty fair bet. For me, a surprising amount of color on this wine.
Yeah.
For this age.
It's darker and maybe the tiniest bit of brown or orange around the edges, but it's only around the edges. It's not at all beyond that.
Yeah.
And the nose is so much richer. It's strange. I cannot possibly give like normal comments when it comes to how, because I've never been like trained in this is medium plus or anything like that.
Right.
So I'm like, this is a general store. This is rows and rows and rows of candy and peanut brittle and, old wood that the building's been around since the 1800s or whatever. Like, all of these things are all sort of coming together in the way that this nose handles its, very pronounced dark fruits.
Yeah, this wine has more dark fruit characteristics than any of the ones that we've just tried. I think that part of that is vintage, part of that, I actually think a little of that is age, but I think the vintage is where we came in with darker fruit flavors at that point. Alcohol on this wine, 14.2, so a little bit more ripe than we've been since that time frame, and that may be part of it as well.
Yeah, it certainly is a stronger mouthfeel than any of the previous ones. The acidity's there, but the fruit is turned up a little bit. And is maturing. It's not a berried, fresh picked berry kind of thing. It's more of It's more of like a really good jelly, or kind of reminds me of some of those old weird British dishes where you had like jelly and meat, like a beef roast with blackberries kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
So you have that savory, meaty thing, but then you also have a cooked, a high quality fruit cooked down character.
We're going to have fun tasting through the Syrah. Part of how I describe the Syrah is kind of that hanged meat, black pepper, violaceous fruit kind of thing going on. Yeah, this has some of those qualities as well. There's a little bit of bacon fat that can be seen, not necessarily so much in this wine, but some of our more recent Pinot vintages. What a weird thing to find in a glass.
Yeah. Well, that's the wonderful thing about wine, isn't it? Is that there are all of these other flavors and experiences and memories and things that come in interesting wines, in well-made wines, in terroir-driven wines, and in aged wines that are beyond the experience of, okay, this was pleasant, drinkable, and I got a little buzzy buzz.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of why I've so much loved the opportunity to not only discover cool new vineyards and cool new people making Pinot Noir, but also to see sort of how these wines progress over time. And honestly, I still think this could do again the years it's done so far. I could do another 20. And it's kind of a testament to the winemaking, to the vineyard, to all that, but also to the screw cap, because of I think how the Pinot character, the fruit character, is holding up at a level that I wouldn't expect.
For me, I think the biggest knock on a screw cap is it's not a cork.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, it's a great closure. It takes care of the wine that we put in there. I'm pleased as can be. Corks are fun. I just like screw caps.
Awesome. So let's taste the Syrah.
All right, so we're going to start with the Etnyre 2020 Syrah, our current release.
Wow. It's like aromatic purple, like just...
It just brings me back to the winery. The whole winery smells like this when this is going on. And then, the kind of, the purple, kind of almost iridescent highlighter purple right on the margin. Mm-hmm. That fades a little bit, right around bottling time. But classic kind of cool grown Syrah nose, gamey, red and
gamey,
black
animalistic,
fruit. Oh man, what I love about Syrah.
This reminds me of some other Syrah that I've had from, strangely enough, that I actually had from Austria, which reminded me of like a piece of like crispy liver with jelly on like a hot piece of like obsidian rock. Like you have this meaty gaminess, you have this melted fruit thing happening, this dark melted fruit, and then you have this stone component coming through in. Yeah, and I get all of that, like even like sweet August asphalt
In a glass.
in a glass.
Nice.
Tell me a little bit about Syrah and sort of why you chose to plant Syrah here and what were you thinking?
I got that question a lot early on. Central Coast, 3 miles from the ocean, what are you thinking? Yeah, as we talked about, the challenge of ripening up this fruit just here, 3 miles from the ocean, was something that numerous people doubted was going to be possible. Some of my respected friends and winemakers thought maybe that won't work out. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking sparkling Shiraz, but not that closely. But it was a leap to plant that here back in '98. I've always loved cool climate Syrah. This is exactly what I was looking to make. I just got pleasantly lucky that this is the place I purchased, this is the place we planted. We get this out of the vineyard in the backyard that just This is a Syrah. I just love this Syrah. It's a treat to drink at any time. Goes, so we've talked about foods and how I like to pair things with foods, and I'm usually not eating vegetarian, so I've usually got some kind of meat, lighter meats, the miso and the pork. I'm sorry, the miso and the salmon that came out. Miso and the pork also works really nice.
Miso pork would be really interesting.
With the Pinot as well. Burgers and steaks and this kind of like gamey, irony kind of stone mineral driven kind of thing works so well. And again also higher acid wine cuts through the food, cuts through the fat really nicely.
Yeah, there's like you said, there's a lot of acid here, but that acid is not in the way that sometimes acid is just created by picking early. And then it's sort of, you've got these other things, and then you have this acid. It's acid that's integrated the way that a lot of good French wine integrate their acid. Where it can be very high in acid, but it's not peeling your teeth. Like, it's not a red wine that is designed for like to be chilled, and then like it's much more sort of serious in terms of how this is made.
And like you said, integrated. Having something that works well front to back. The flavors meld well together. The acid works right. There's a little bit of tannin going on in this Syrah. It all melds well together, and then it all works well with food.
Yes, it's crazy balance. I'm starting to, get a little bit of like a tingle on my tongue, like starting to get some saliva going on.
I was thinking about food right about now as we started in with this. I thought, we need a little prosciutto.
All sorts of things. Yes, indeed.
So our upcoming release is the 2021 Syrah from Quin's Vineyard, Etnyre Wines. And
yeah, aromatically it just got a little wilder and funkier.
yes, it did. It's interesting to think of Syrah with, I get kind of wild flowers as well in the nose. And not something I equate with typically opening up a bottle of Syrah.
Well, you get Syrah is a mountain wine, especially when it's grown on sort of a steeper hill like this, whether here or in other places around the world. And there's all of these mountain things. There's the stone. There's the wind that you always feel on a mountain. But then there's like animals, like goats and things. Like this would be an incredible goat stew wine, right? Roast lamb, roast goat, various types of game birds that we see on the mountain. And then flowers and herbs and grasses and things like that. So you get all of these type of things in that mountain Syrah in the taste as well. And I can't really call it a mountain, but like the hill. But the point, it's steep.
Yes.
And you're right. I get the flowers. I get more herbs, which I think was also the case in the Pinot, where the slightly younger one had more of that showing up.
Yes.
You've kept this under 14%, which is nice.
And that works for us from a farming standpoint, from a harvest standpoint. We're getting the flavors that we like in the grapes and then in the winery. Letting it hang longer would be interesting. If I had 5 chances at it and I had 25 acres and I divided it out and I could do a little bit of different kinds of harvests and see, but I'm not as interested in that as I am in making the wine that we make that's in the 14s. Low 14s for a Syrah works great with me. I think we get interesting, nuanced flavors, stone and gamey and herby and flowery. I don't want those to go away.
Yeah.
I want, at perhaps a bit of a cost of pumping up the fruit. I like the amount of fruit that we have in these wines as well, and I think that works really well. I think that, like I mentioned, it ends up adding to a more harmonious wine, something that comes together well, something that isn't, disjointed on the palate. It's smooth.
You don't have to turn Syrah into Pulsard, but you also don't have to turn it into port. All right, so there is this space where it can be a full-bodied wine. It's allowed to be itself, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be over the top. It doesn't have to be super high alcohol. With the vineyard behind us, planted, you said primarily to Syrah and Pinot.
Yes.
How does that break down in terms of like how much of each one?
So originally planted, we planted what ended up being about an acre of Pinot and Syrah, split pretty much down the middle, half to Syrah and half to Pinot. We planted again in 2002 and 2006, ending up with, again, pretty much split down the middle, half of Pinot and half of Syrah. All of the Syrah is all on one clone, and then the Pinot is the 2A clone from the original planting, and then the field blend of 114, 667, and 777 for the newer planting of Pinot.
And are these Syrah 100% Syrah or no?
Almost. So we have one row, actually the third row right up behind us, where that row is Torrontés, the Argentinian white variety. And that takes on a very floral kind of quality, if people aren't familiar with that. A lot like Viognier. So a lot of upfront florals, which may be in part some of the floral that we're talking about. We're talking about somewhere between 1% and 2%. Whatever we can grow, we harvest and harvest it at the same time. It's not separated and or weighed separately. It is one row. It's ballpark 1% to 2%. My friend was a consultant down in Argentina and somehow made it back with perhaps a little bit of wood in the suitcase that ended up in the backyard in the vineyard, and that's how we ended up with Torrontés. I don't know it without Torrontés, because every year we harvest it and put it in. I love the wine in total. I believe that the Torrontés has a role.
And you're doing a co-ferment similar to Côte Rôtie with that?
Exactly. Yes. Just like, so that was my interest, is making it just like Côte Rôtie, except without Viognier and with Torrontés.
Awesome. Very cool.
So now we're going to taste the Etnyre 2014 Quin's Vineyard Syrah.
Awesome. Aromatically, this is reminding me so much of the really, really old vine stuff out of McLaren Vale, like the 80 to 120-year-old vine stuff. It's got that really dark, matured, hard candy, and then it's not pure eucalyptus like it would be in McLaren Vale, but there is some strong herb vine something on the nose.
And this has been one of our bigger Syrahs, I think, that we've made. It comes in at 14.5 alcohol. I think it's just a really interesting wine. This wine was harvested on the later side. It was a cooler year that year. I think that's in part why we're getting such a deeper kind of flavor profile. I love this wine for its deeper flavor profile. I miss, and I think we'll see probably in the 2005, a little bit more of the floral characteristics. I mean, there's still a wonderful nose to this wine, but I really enjoy some of what we've found in the first two Syrahs that we tasted, where this seems a little on the bigger side. It reminds me, 2009, 10, and 11, we fermented our Syrah in barrel. Popped the heads out, fermented in barrel. Oh, it smells so good in the winery. It was just amazing. And as those wines have aged, I like them plenty. I think they're wonderful wines. I don't like them as much as I've liked some of my other wines. I would, well, and we stopped doing that in part because while I love the nose in the winery, I thought that they weren't quite as floral. They weren't quite as site specific. The oak kind of took over a little bit more. And this was not brand new oak that we were using. We were using, those barrels had been used 1 and 2 times prior. So it wasn't just huge oak that was masking things, but the amount of oak and the fashion that we fermented made wines that I thought we would not continue doing. I thought I really liked what we had prior. I love the floral nose. I love the prettier style up front rather than the bigger wine. This as a bigger wine that we make, I like it a lot. I like it. It's like trying to pick which one is your favorite child. That's the beauty of having one child. It's not a tough choice.
Very easy to pick which one you like.
We have 19 past vintages. It gets a little harder.
That's really good, and you're starting to really feel bitterness and structure and things on the end there. It's crying out for more fat in the pairing than the previous wines. So whereas you would have been, great with like that pork and miso, I think here you need a good slab of, like pork belly and stuff. You need that fat doing something.
Definitely need some fat with this wine. Yes.
Awesome. 10 years old and still a baby. A decade more minimum.
Right. That's part of, like we've talked about this. Screw cap helps. The vineyard helps. The acid structure helps. These wines can go a while longer, I think. Easily.
No question on that.
And hopefully proving my point, this would be the 2005 Syrah.
Excellent.
I haven't had this wine in a couple of years. So I think we'll both be pleasantly surprised.
Thank you for opening it.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah. Now you're really starting to get into that, the fruit merging with the underbrush.
Yes.
I heard Marc Cochard from Chateau Moussard gave this wonderful example of how wines age. And he said, first it's on the tree, the fruit is on the tree, but it's not ripe yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of when it's first picked, and maybe it's not made into wine, or maybe it's just released, right? And then it will ripen, and at some point it will over-ripen, but it's still connected to the tree. It's just the fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Then that will be a little overripe, and it will fall off, and it will sit on top of the forest floor. So it's still 99% the fruit with the tiniest hints of the leaves and the sticks and the stems and the earth. And over time it will decompose until it goes and it is half and half with the sticks and the stems and the dirt, until finally there's like 1% of the fruit left and it's all sticks and stems and dirt. And maybe eventually there's only the sticks and the stems and the dirt left.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the progression that many wines have over the years or decades. If you just sort of taste a year after year after year after year after year of the wine.
Yeah.
It will go through that process, and that's stuck with me. I've never been able to sort of not see that anymore. I always see that.
Right. Where in the life of this vineyard, of this wine, is
where
is
where is the
sitting at
fruit
this moment.
coming?
Yeah.
And if this, you've got the fruit, and it's, it's maturing, and maybe it's just fallen and just sitting at the top, and we're starting to get all sorts of things that are no longer purely the fruit, but are incredibly interesting.
I'm glad you like it. Yeah, I find this just, such an interesting wine at this age. 19-year-old Syrah, I think most people you probably talk to and most people I talk to would pass on a wine, on a Syrah that's 19 years old. And perhaps maybe more in California, but I think a lot of people are drinking their wines mighty young, and I understand that's part of how things work well from a consumer standpoint. Being able to drink something that's 19 years old that holds up like this is a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to describe, I think, right now, all of the things that are flowing in through here, because I get things that I want to say them and they don't sound necessarily like they're good, but it's like the good version of. So like the good version of that fruit roll-ups that you as a kid left in the car, and it's now super hot and a little messy, you're trying to peel it off the plastic, and like that version, and the kind of like bubbly tar that you experience in certain places on the really hot days, and but at the same time it's not a hot wine.
Right.
So these are all like heat indicators, but they're heat indicators from memory. Like you're not hot anymore, but you're remembering what it was like to. It's weird, but
And it's nuanced. It's not all hot tar. I think
No, it's
we've had
these
wines
things.
of a lot of hot tar. It's a wonderful combination of all kinds of things. Both, a bit of gamey, a bit of minerality. Plenty of fruit from a 19-year-old wine.
A lot of fruit for a 19-year-old wine, and great color. Still, there's no brown at all in a 19-year-old.
And another wine that'll last a long time.
Yeah.
And a nice long finish.
Yeah. I'm getting like lead pencil, and I'm getting, really great like the kind of juicy red plum you have to eat over the sink, right? Like that level of like juiciness. That's awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That is beautiful. I've had a lot of very good Syrah on this trip to the Central Coast, and that is absolutely one of the best. Just phenomenal stuff.
Thanks very much. I'm glad you liked it.
Thank you so much. So thank you very much for tasting with me and for letting me experience these really special bottles and chance to visit your lovely property.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks so much. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right. We haven't even started drinking yet.
Right.
All right.
Enjoy the wine, Minneapolis.
Enjoy the wine, Minneapolis.